Hey everyone, it's Dr. Jason West, and welcome to our Wednesday night masterclass. We've got a lot of stuff that we're going to go over and talk about food allergies and food sensitivities. And as we keep doing the program, I think we're getting better and better. I introduce you to my friend right here. So this is our microphone that we seem to get better sound if I do one right here and pick it up. I'm trying to get it out of the shot, but I'm pretty excited about this new setup and stuff that we're putting together. And what we're going to be talking about tonight is the master class on stomach health, food sensitivities, food allergies. You know, we started off this stomach program as looking at one, acid reflux, number one. And then we moved to the next thing, which was diarrhea, constipation. And then from that, we moved to Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And then last week it was hemorrhoids. And then I thought, oh, we'll do this, knock this out in one weekend or one seminar system. And now we're going to be talking about, again, stomach health, the secrets to stomach health. It actually turned into a 6-part series. And that's what we're going to be working on tonight, is talking about food sensitivities. We usually try and put together a free ebook associated with this. And this one was there's a lot of stuff to go over on this one. We don't quite have it done, but if you'll put in hashtag food health, that's what we're going to be sending out. We should have everything done Friday on our free ebook on food health. So if we, let me just put this up here so that I can get the right thing. All right, I got to get this thing. Food health hashtag is where you want to be at. So food health, stomach health, food sensitivities. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, let's just start into it. Now, you are what you eat, and you are what you absorb. And so this is why it was so fascinating to do this topic, because this is what I get faced with every single day. People say, hey, what should I be eating? And unfortunately, there's a lot of times when people are craving foods that they shouldn't be eating, and they don't even know that they're sensitive to, and it's putting them to a state of inflammation. And remember, inappropriate inflammation is the source of all disease. So this is a topic that I'm really excited to share with people, because if you get your stomach system working better and you get foods that you're eating and breaking down, then you're going to be healthy. I read a study about 80% of all healthcare conditions are related to nutrition, either not getting enough vitamins and minerals, essential fats and proteins, or the inability to absorb them. And the food natural insecticides and the natural herbicides that we're going to talk about in the food sensitivity platform, they're one of the biggest culprits or biggest reasons for that. So looking at just some of the stats associated with this, as many as 15 million people have food sensitivities, food allergies. 9 million have food allergies. So if you add them together, obviously 24 million people have food problems, and it's a growing segment in kids. And, they said 18% in 2008. Now we're having increased approximately 50%. So many kids have food allergies, and you wouldn't think that people would say, look, food sugars, food dyes are such a huge problem with behavior. And it's so many times people are reacting to what's in the foods, especially kids. And you know what? They get an inappropriate diagnosis of being a space cadet or having ADD or ADHD, when really what's happening is they're getting a food into their system. They're having this hypersensitivity, hyperreactive condition where their IgG are flying up. And what's happening is their bodies are mad on the inside. And then what happens is their nervous system can't focus. And if you think it's just in kids, you're wrong. I mean, I ate something today. I'm not going to tell you what it was, because I try to follow my own advice. But I had a partial donut today. A patient brought some in the office from this bakery, and I felt like horrible. My knuckles started bothering me. I just felt terrible the day. And then I was mad at myself because I know better. But I'm kind of my own normal patient. But that's just one example of adult onset food sensitivities. When you do something you're not supposed to, you're going to pay the price. So let's start talking about food allergies. It's an abnormal response triggered by the immune system. It causes a lot of illness and problems, and no surprise, like we've all heard about people that are sensitive to nuts or shellfish, and it can be serious. You can die from a food problem. A food intolerance, on the other hand, is an abnormal physiologic response to eating because we can't break it down. And so many times people come in and they say, hey, Dr. West, I've got dumping disorder. Now, they don't exactly put words to it, but dumping disorder means like if you get the wrong food in your system, your body immediately is like, I got to get rid of it. And remember, anything that comes into your body or that you touch or that you smell, our body has to figure out to do three things with it. Do we break it down for energy? Do we use it for building blocks, or do we get rid of it? And so many times when we get the wrong thing in your body, and so many times it's phenols. Now, what is a phenol? Well, phenol is basically an alcohol group associated with a chemical inside of a food that in essence makes it so bugs don't eat it. So like if you put an orange out on your countertop, it doesn't immediately, get mold on it or break down and basically start to disintegrate. Same thing with the banana. When you put a banana up on the counter, it doesn't immediately turn brown because the chemical or the vegetable is making these phenols, and the phenols are like a kind of a mild antibiotic or a mild food preservative. And so it's not allowing the environmental, so the fungus and the enzymes that are going to be in the food to start breaking down. The body is trying to preserve it. And so what happens is we're just bigger bugs. And sometimes people say, initially I was really sensitive to tomatoes, and then it was tomatoes and potatoes, and then it was tomatoes to potatoes and kiwi fruit or oranges. And so they're foods that used to bother like this, and then it starts to go like that. And we call that spreading phenomenon. It's the body is got into this agitated state. Now everything starts to bother it. And so food intolerance is caused by a lack of our body's ability to digest certain things. And remember also, there's a mind-body connection where if you get really stressed, you're going to be more sensitive, both for good and for bad, to certain foods. And what I mean by that is so many times when people are agitated emotionally, they turn to foods that have a high glycemic index, and they have foods that literally cause a lot of problems because it gets a short-term energy input from the sugar. It can, there's emotional eating that can occur that can fire off, some of the dopamine receptors and stuff like that. And this is why I talk about every single week. It's so important to do this, which is to have an outlet. Every week, every day I talk about this with the patients, saying, look, we want to put the best treatments that we possibly know in your system. And we also want to make sure that you have a stress outlet. Do you have something that allows you to be zen or be at peace? Is that walking? Is it gardening? Is it playing a musical instrument? Is it journaling? Is it doing whatever hobby that really helps you? And then we got to make sure that gets done. So exercise, putting the right foods into your system. If you have to function every day with, high sugar and an energy drink, or a prescription that is an upper, like something is off physiologically. And one of the best places to start with that is having a stress outlet, number one. And then number two, one of the very best things is to use water. I see so many good outcomes with water. When we talk about food allergies and food sensitivities, one of the safest things you can do is you can put water in your system. Now, there are some rare conditions and diseases where people can be allergic to water, but it's so low. And so one of the first things I tell people, like, get rid of food dyes and stuff that is artificial, and improve it with some water intake. So just remember, there's a mind-body connection, and food allergies and food intolerance is a little bit different. We're going to go through that. Just a quick comparison. Food allergy is an immune system mediated, like urticaria, or a reaction to proteins like celiac disease, or EOE, which is esophagitis, contact dermatitis, are examples of immune system mediated. Food intolerance is like metabolic issues, or things like sensitivities to lactose or caffeine or fish, shellfish, or sulfites, which are basically food preservatives that are in food. So a little bit different pathways, but to talk about like how things can really bother you, food allergies. They bind to mast cells. Of course, there's a condition called mast cell syndrome. Results in the release of excessive release of histamine. Usually it's pretty rapid onset, 30 minutes to 2 hours. There's a diagnostic prick test that is pretty good assessment. Non-IgG, or the opposite, is that the ingested protein causes immune response delayed. It's 2 to 24 hours, or it can be either longer. And this is one of the challenges when people don't feel good from different foods and they can't put their finger on it. And they'll say, I know I'm sensitive to something. I don't know what it is. Well, part of the problem, a lot of the culprits are in this protein agitation process. And sometimes it can take up to 4 days to figure out what it is. And I'm going to go through exactly how I recommend and how I would help people with food sensitivities. But that's one of the challenges. And I think, doing a consistent food elimination diet and getting foods out of your system that I know cause problems for so many people is a great place to start with this. And this isn't new information. This is something that I came up with. I love this book called Breaking the Vicious Cycle. I'm going to talk about it later in part of the presentation, but Breaking the Vicious Cycle gives you a really nice roadmap to reset your food intolerances. I believe that we can retrain the immune system to not have these sensitivities and these allergic responses. It's a different approach than what is mostly offered in medicine. But I think when you combine that with a food elimination diet for appropriate time period, most of the time people are saying, hey, Dr. West, I tried eliminating dairy. Well, how long did you try? Well, I did it for 2 weeks. I didn't eat dairy. I did really well. I didn't eat it for 4 weeks. Well, the studies are showing that things like, especially with wheat, like the microvilli in your stomach, they don't even really heal or change for 90 days. So what does that mean? Like you got to when you do a food elimination program, you got to do it for at least 90 days. And I have found so many people do really well when they get out artificial wheat out of their system. So what does that mean? That means like we do really well to not have any wheat for a time period. Now you could go spend tons of money on food tests and put a camera down your stomach and do the celiac tests. And I tell people this, one of the best recommendations that I've seen, when I felt the best and when people feel the best, is when they go and they don't eat wheat. And I'm a perfect example of this. I fell off the wagon today at a moment of weakness. And man, I just felt so off the rest of the day. And I know it's because I put some inflammatory stuff in my system. So I got to be like everybody else. Okay, I got to get correct and get back on the wagon. And this is the other part that's hard. If you're just trying to eliminate, and I say just, when you go on like a diet program where you want to lose weight and we're watching and restricting carbs, there are time periods where like if you fall off the wagon a little bit and you're at a birthday party, you have a little bit of cake, if it's just for the carbohydrate, like you can recover from that. And literally within, 12 hours, the body is going to really reset those sugar pathways if you're having a sugar restrictive diet, but not so with some of these food allergies, especially wheat and some of the proteins that are in eggs and dairy. What happens is if you go 45 days where you haven't eaten any wheat or you haven't eaten any eggs, and then you're like, you know what, I was just at my son's or my nephew's birthday party and I just literally had to have a cake and some other, and what happens is you have to start over. So this is the easy, hard part. I mean, it's all hard, but recognizing people have to give more time for food sensitivities. Okay, food intolerances, food poisoning, excessive histamine toxicity, lactose intolerance, monosodium glutamate, and these preservatives like in salami and cured meats can be really hard on people that have food intolerances. And I got to just share this with you. I was going to wait for the end. I just have to tell you, one of the best things that I know how to help food intolerances and food sensitivities, and it spreads over into allergies, especially seasonal allergies, is you have to work on your secondary glands of detoxification. What are those? Number one, like the thyroid here, like everybody thinks thyroid, weight loss, heat intolerance, dry skin, brittle nails, hair falling out, like all those are classic signs of thyroid problems. excessive intolerance to heat, exophthalmos when your eyes come out is when when you get fat pads behind your eyes and they bulge out a little bit. All of those are classic signs of either having a hyperactive thyroid or an underactive thyroid. But the thyroid is a gland, secondary gland of detoxification. So many times it gets toxins in it. Every couple minutes, the blood of the body is going through the thyroid, and a toxic thyroid is one of the biggest culprits in food sensitivities. And what's fun about this is there is a herb called yakatron that's so good for cleaning out the thyroid. And when you get the thyroid cleaned out, and then this is not a thyroid prescription, it's not a thyroid glandular where you're trying to simulate the thyroid gland. What it is it's a really nice way to clean out the thyroid. So many times allergies, seasonal allergies and food sensitivities respond so nicely to a clean thyroid. Of course, the other part of that is the adrenal glands, which support adrenaline. And that's if you walk outside and you see a bear, a snake, a tarantula, what happens? Your breathing goes up, your pupils can restrict. You get that fight or flight response. Well, with chronic stress problems, the body can determine, is it a tiger that's in front of me? And for me, it would be a snake. If there was a snake in front of me, can the body determine whether it's a snake or is it relationships? Is it relatives? Is it finances? Is it work relationships? Is it kids? Is it caring for your parents? Like there's so many different stresses. And if we don't manage stress, it's going to tax the adrenal gland. It's going to tax the thyroid. And when I say manage stress, like you have to find out what the thing is that helps you to manage life as best you can and do that on a consistent basis. There's so many different things for stress. Okay. The allergic reactions, IgG, works against food. And what it does is the IgEG also can attack the basophils, which attach to the nose, the throat, the lungs, and the skin. That's why sometimes people get a specific type of food and they feel like I can't breathe. There's some things that are shutting off. I'm having these excessive mucus secretions. My eyes are absolutely watering. I've got that runny nose. And so the food allergens are proteins within the food that enter the bloodstream after ingested. This is a little bit of the slower response. It's not the contact or immediate response. And so they attack the skin and have those allergic reactions. Usually those ones are pretty quick. And so this is a really nice schematic. We're going to pick on peanuts. Peanuts get into the system, then the dendritic cells respond. Then you have the peanut-specific T cells, and then it goes to basically the thymus regulation, and then you get the mast cells, and all of a sudden it releases the histamines, the leukotrienes, and the cytokines, and the prostaglandins, all these cells that cause itching and swelling and nausea and vomiting. And so particularly when it comes to peanuts or eggs or shellfish, there you have the patient involved. I mean, it goes from mild to life-threatening. You have to really put together like a program. Like I can't be around this stuff. Now those conditions can be really difficult for you to train your immune system if you go into the state of anaphylaxis. If it's irritating but not putting you into shock, then there's what's called homodesensitization therapy, which is we want to retrain the nervous system. And when I talk about retraining, like if I walked out into a field of ragweed pollen and I was with someone that had no allergies and I'm having allergies, one of the things that's happening there is my body is over responding to a stimuli. The person that doesn't have allergies, the immune system is processing these normally. It can work the same with milk. It can work with wheat. It can work with tomatoes. Like there are all these different things. And one of the medical approaches for the allergy management is, okay, let's downregulate your histamine response. Let's give you a steroid. Let's give you an antihistamine, which is a good temporary thing where the body all of a sudden is going to downregulate. The problem with that is long-term use of steroids and antihistamine is not healthy. Like there's other diseases and conditions. Possibly a better way to manage this is to take the immune system into a classroom and retrain it so that when it does be exposed to that antigen or that allergy, it doesn't have the temper tantrum. So we're going to talk about that at the end of the slide. So Cell-mediated reactions, which are 6 to 24 hours later, can last up to 4 days, are not completely understood. And the foods and the T lymphocytes that are in the gut. So there's so many important things that are happening in your GI system. One is if you can break down and absorb foods, we have a lot better chance for health. But also we have neurotransmitters in there. And then we have this GALT, gut-associated lymphoid tissue, which releases these chemicals that are really important for our immune system to work. And in those processes, the antibodies aren't really involved. So some of the cell-mediated conditions are things like atopic dermatitis, urticaria, angioedema, and itchy anus. I see so much of this when people say, man, I just itch like crazy. And usually what happens is they'll say, Dr. West, I need to talk to you about something. Can you and me just talk for a minute? And kind of in a serious and yet I wouldn't say funny because that's not the right word, but maybe a little bit of just an awkward moment. I know two things are coming. When a man asks me to do that and they want my assistant to leave, it usually means either one, we've got some kind of erectile dysfunction, male health concern, or they get an itchy rectum. And so it's so common when people say, look, I got food sensitivities, they can't absorb things. And then what happens is they itch. And so one of the best things we can do is we can clean the intestines. We've talked about this in ulcerative colitis and in Crohn's disease, inflammatory bowel disease. There's a lint roller. And that lint roller is the ochrapepsin, which is that sticky herb that basically binds up with the mucus and allows that digestive thing to clean off the part of the GI system. It's kind of like a lint roller. Well, there's also a really nice product that comes basically from a specific type of healthy yeast. And a lot of times people freak out when I suggest this, but there's a specific type of healthy yeast, a probiotic, basically derivative, that is so good for alkalinizing the GI system and helping to have an itchy anus, or what they call pruritus. Internal allergies, and this is why we talked about diarrhea. I always think of diarrhea, number one, infection, and then number two, food sensitivity, food allergies. But it can go the opposite. You can have constipation, you can have nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain and distension, belching. And I've got a couple typos in there. I apologize for that. The other thing is the food allergies in the respiratory pathway. You can have the runny nose, which is the seasonal rhinitis allergies, the rhinitis, the itchy, watery eyes, asthma, and laryngeal edema. You get swelling in the throat. And so many times people that have food sensitivities will come in and say, look, I feel like I can't breathe, or my throat's closing off. And there's a physiologic explanation of that. Like a lot of times it's laryngeal edema. And people say, I went and I had some imaging and I scanned and I had a workup and I didn't have a heart attack. I just feel like something's closing off right here. So the biggest culprit for that is food sensitivities. And then in the nervous system, when you have sort of all of these allergy markers and things like that, now we start talking about migraines, spots before the eyes, restlessness, hyperactivity, lack of concentration, irritability, and dizziness. And so basically what happens is if your immune system isn't working right, you're not working right, and you can have conditions where you can get these severe skin problems, this urticaria vasculitis. You can go into shock and circulatory collapse. And yes, it's totally possible for these to be fatal. And so when we look kind of at a general overview of food sensitivities and food allergies, milk is a big factor, nuts, peanuts, shellfish. See a lot of conditions with eggs, which is unfortunate because when people have reactions to eggs, I'm so disappointed in other conditions because I love the protein structures in eggs. I think it's such a good food if you're not sensitive to it. And if you are sensitive to it, there's some hope. So a workup, what to do with someone with allergy tests. And by the way, I put this picture up here because this is one of the classic signs, specifically in kids, when you have this really angry rash around the mouth. But you want to do a blood test, a metabolic panel, a RAS test. It's always nice to look at the hormone test. And by the way, there's a really simple test that is such a nice insight into seeing if your hormones are healthy. And it's so inexpensive. Most people can do this at home, especially if they have a blood pressure cuff. I mean, you have to have one to do this test, but it's called Ragland's test. You take your blood pressure lying down and you record your blood pressure and your pulse rate. Your blood pressure should be 120 over 80, give or take a few points. And your pulse rate ideally should be 60 to 90. I love it between 60 and 70. And then let's do a mini stress test. Let's see how your body responds to stress. Simply, let's have you stand up. And then you repeat the blood pressure and the pulse rate. Now, what should happen is when your body has an increased workload or, quote, a mini stress test, your adrenal glands, which are these golf ball shaped glands that sit on top of each kidney, should immediately tell the heart to beat harder. There should be an immediate response. So you should, and the systolic and diastolic pressure should go up 6 to 10 beats. I love this test. It's so simple and easy. It tells me what's happening on so many different hormone levels. I mean, it doesn't tell me exactly, is it estrogen, progesterone, is it testosterone, is it DHEA, is it cortisol, a muscle hormone? It doesn't say that. But what it does say is give me a really nice overview of all the hormones in the body and how the patient is managing stress. So you're 120 over 80 here. You stand up, you should be 126 over 86. And just as important, you want to know what the pulse rate is. Does the pulse rate stay the same? So ideally, 120 over 80, pulse rate is 60. Stand up, 126 over 86, pulse rate is 60. The pulse shouldn't change. Frequently, what happens when the body goes to adapt, it needs to tell the heart to beat faster because it's out of juice. In our 2021 lifestyle, it's so unusual to not find someone that's undergoing chronic stress patterns. We shouldn't have chronic stress patterns. I mean, it's easy to say, it's hard to do, but it's so shocking to me when I see someone that has a proper or a normal Ragland's test, but it really helps understand what's happening, not only from a stress management, but from a physiology standpoint. And so looking at those tests, do an energy assessment. I love doing the medical research, medical microscopy, and a tissue mineral assay to get an understanding what's happening. And then the food allergy management, symptom management is the most common. So that's a lot of doctors will here, take Zyrtec, take Allegra, or take an antihistamine. You want to avoid the foods that you know that are bothering you. And I'm going to tell you about the hormone desensitization therapy, and stress management applies literally to everything. So let's talk just a little bit about hormone desensitization therapy. This is a German technique put together by a doctor named Reinhard Voll, who has passed away, but way ahead of his time. And he basically was saying, look, it's possible to retrain the immune system response to foods. It's possible to retrain the allergic response to foods by introducing a tiny amount of the food and retraining the immune system. So they call it homogenization or serial dilution protocol. So I'm just going to pick on ragweed pollen before. So that's an environmental allergy where you take one drop of one drop of ragweed pollen, diluted in 9 drops of water, repeated that. We do these serial dilutions, and it gets into the field of homeopathy. Now, some people don't like homeopathy, and my response is it doesn't work for everybody. But I will tell you this, I've seen it absolutely do miracles on other people, and I feel that it's benign. It's not going to hurt you. There's also some orthomolecular medicine that's available. And orthomolecular medicine means this: things like stinging nettle, vitamin C, yakatron, allicin, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, all of those things, like it really does help the body to regulate the immune system or the inflammatory response in the proper way. Now, why I put this picture up, this is our case from last week. This is Amy's story. Amy came to the office very cautious, wanting, I'm not really sick, I just want to feel better. We did a food sensitivity test. This is called a biotech test. We found that she was allergic to, or very sensitive to dairy. We eliminated eliminated that out of her diet, did the food sensitivity or food elimination program. And what happened is she absolutely got her life back. It's such a fun story. You can see it on our Facebook and our YouTube channel. It was just last Thursday. We talked, and what was empowering about that? So one of the things, if you have an allergy, like consider doing a biotech test. We measure the antibodies to 96 common foods, IgG, IgA, and IgM are possible to do all that. And then it will tell you, like what is bothering you in your diet. And it's so empowering for people to know, like, this isn't a guess. We're just testing your immune system to figure out, are you sensitive to corn? Are you sensitive to beef? Are you sensitive to dairy? And then when Amy saw that and she made the course correction, just a really, really good outcome. Now, the food intolerance program that I like to recommend people, if you know what you're sensitive to, at all costs, avoid it for 90 days. And you also have to be aware that some of these phenols, which really cause problems for people, it's only as a raw food group. So there's also a consideration, and it's talked about in the Breaking the Vicious Cycle book I'm going to show you about in just a second. I have no vested interest. I have no affiliation with the book or anything like that. I just think it's the best way to help reset food intolerances is you've got to be religious and get that out of your diet for 90 days. Antioxidants, glutathione is one of my favorites. Another herb, Spanish black radish, is a really good one. And then my favorite vitamin C, is so helpful for knocking stuff out of the system. The Codex Alimentaris guidelines, which basically are saying this is what we'd recommend. It's a European governmental agency. Avoid cereals. You want to avoid shrimp and lobster, eggs products, peanuts, milk products, tree nuts, and sulfites, which are food preservatives usually seen in cured meats. So, the deli meats and sausage and bacon, you'll see have a lot of sulfides in this. Okay, the most medical management for food sensitivities is a prescriptive steroid antihistamine pathway. Stay away from the foods causing the response, and the common allergens list I already walked over, of peanuts, of shrimp, of shellfish, and things like that. Now, most of the time, the treatment's available. Prescription therapy is one. I love this herb called Yakatron, and then the phenolic retraining. I see really good outcomes with that. This is my favorite book. You can get this on Amazon. Breaking the Vicious Cycle by Elaine Gottschall. She was a nurse that had horrible, horrible GI problems. I think it was ulcerative colitis that was her primary diagnosis. Literally did a food elimination diet, did fermented foods, and brought it all back. It's the Bible on how to break the cycle and literally be able to live normal as you go through this book. It's my favorite book on food sensitivities. It's a little bit dated. I think it was published in 1990. I think it's about 10 or 12 bucks on Amazon. And this is my favorite book on food sensitivities. Some basics. This is what I tell people. Just try and avoid white food sensitivities initially. To avoid white things, white flour, white sugar. The only exception is cauliflower. You can have cauliflower, at least the most part. Dairy, not so much your friend. And when I get people to do this, I almost always see a good outcome, which is avoid wheat for at least 90 days. So with the food sensitivity program, the food allergy, like we're coming out with our book. I try to have it for each show. I'm a little bit behind. We should have this out on Friday. It's easy for you if you're on Facebook or YouTube. In the comments, if you'll just type in #foodhelp, I will give you my free ebook on food allergies and what it's helpful for. Also, there's some resources available for you. West Clinic Online is where we host everything. We actually have a link in a blog of our podcast. And if you need additional help for food sensitivities or chronic health problems, send us an email at info@West Clinic Online. Next week, we've got some really neat things. Oh, I forgot. The ebook download should be out Friday. If you have #foodhelp, or if you send me an email, I'll send you the book. I've just got a little bit of editing and stuff to put together. It was a bigger project than I anticipated. And I want to tell everybody, for next week, we have finished the stomach guideline. It ended up being a 6-part series. It was really fun and educational for me to go. So acid reflux, it's always good to do, I think, food enzymes and acetic acid. If you have too much food or acid in your stomach, then we need to downregulate the sympathetic nervous system with a mineral called phosphorus. Phosphorus, a miracle mineral, just like magnesium, doesn't get as much pub as calcium, but it helps to calm down your nervous system. Diarrhea, we're thinking about infections and food sensitivities. Digestive enzyme, protect the stomach. I like fiber, lots and lots of water. Constipation, we've got to work on the bile salt pathway of helping your liver and your gallbladder to secrete bile, which helps to break down fat, but also makes the GI system Move. Also, water is one of my favorite things. Your inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. We want to protect the stomach, help to digest food, eliminate food allergies, get rid of infections if they're there by running a complete blood cell count and considering doing a medical microscopy evaluation. And we want to use the lint roller. Okra. I see that. So good. And an advanced treatment inside the office. You can buy this at home, but rectal insufflation with oxygen ozone combination. I've seen really good outcomes for inflammatory bowel disease and hemorrhoids and anal fissures and everything that's not working at the very exit of your body. And then the food sensitivities. Get Elaine Koschel's book, Breaking the Vicious Cycle. Consider doing homosensitization therapy. That's kind of our stomach system wrap up. Now, what I'm excited to move about when we go into August is we're doing a brand new series called What Would I Do? And that would be, and the reason why I say that is because one of the best ways to know to get a good answer or a fair answer from your medical doc or your healthcare provider or your naturopath, your chiropractor, your acupuncturist, whoever you're seeing, is when you have the diagnosis, it's so important to ask it. Like if you had this, if you were diagnosed with cancer, if you were diagnosed with autoimmune, if you were diagnosed with any of these different conditions, what would you do? And so I've been keeping a log of the questions that I've been asked by patients. One of the first questions is, what would you do if you had skin cancer? That's what we're going to be doing next week. What would I do if I had this condition? I'll share with you my thoughts. I don't have all of the answers, but I do have some, I think, and I'm excited to share that with you. That's our show for tonight. We talked about stomach conditions. Next week, it is the What Would I Do? Remember that all of the shows, the stomach things, available on our website, westcliniconline.com. If you need specific show links, send us an email at info@westcliniconline.com. And we're going to have our food help book out on Friday. All you need to do to get that is just put in hashtag food help in it. This is Dr. Jason West and the West Clinic team saying, see you later. Thanks so much for participating. I'll see you guys next week. And remember, at 7 o'clock, we go into our special membership program where I do specific questions and answer periods, a virtual office visit every week with me from 7 to 8 o'clock. We call it our Thriver community. And in there, I answer all questions, no holds barred. I design treatment programs and special supplements and that we can do. It's all in our Thriver program. If you're interested in that, please give us a comment or reach out to us at our email. That's our show, you guys. I'll see you next week. Totally new topic. And if you've missed the previous stomach things, remember, they're available on our website. We'll see you guys later.